whatever. It's almost like the establishment asserting itself quietly and democratically than it is some sort of rebellion or anything like that. I mean, it's just going to can happen with a whimper, not with a bang. So I think as soon as the state legislator realizes what they're empowered to do and the logic and benefits of such a law, that will happen. But it's just a matter of when that quietude and sobriety is going to take effect.
Okay, and you mentioned that you are involved in agriculture.
Yes, I am. I believe that there's something fundamental and natural about agriculture that is vital to everyone's life, and that if you ask, the job of a democracy is to ask the people what they want, to engage the people in democratic discussion and find out what the people ideas are and what directions they want to go. And I think they want a more agrarian world. I think their primary concerns are food and shelter and good times and intelligence, and I think agriculture is just a wholesome part of any sort of wholesome politics.
Because it relates to the fundamentals of living? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it relates to the fundamentals of living. It's a very direct work. It's the same way democracy and discussion can be very direct. So there's a directness in agriculture that links you to the food you produce. I think you get a much the quality of life is raised by having farms around. I think it's a natural concern of people to spend some time. I have many volunteers that come out on the organic farm and help. And
you manage an organic farm.
We call it organic growing. Yeah, I mean, it's a small business, very low on the totem pole out there. But the idea is that I think if you ask the people of New Jersey, do you want a more agrarian society? They would all say yes. If you say, do you want a less wasteful society? They would all say yes. So somehow, like, garnering and corralling that natural logic of the people is what's lacking in our state and even local governments. It's just the righteousness is just being missed. And I think agriculture is very righteous.
Okay, so I'm not exactly understanding the connection here. You're between engaging with agriculture versus engaging with the local government.
They're just both simple, primordial movements within, I think. The desire for an honest community discussion where people really have the opportunity to come together, to me is just like, being in touch with the production of your food. It's just like hands-on, bare roots sort of.
Okay, so maybe even the opposite is true, that we are not in touch with how our food is grown.
No.
We're not in touch with the process of planting and planting a seed and watering.
And
you're saying that would bring maybe a holism to the person?
Yes, and it would raise the quality of life. I mean, European countrysides have preserved their farms and they're much less suburbanized. And it's just, the quality of life just shoots up because you got these wonderful countrysides that are devoted to farming and everyone's eating food grown around from their valley as much as possible. It's all about, the wisdom that self-sustainability takes.
And what do you mean by quality of life?
Just less pollution, less waste, better food, the same views that existed, it's just like there's just better protection. I mean, all of our land around here is something that everyone enjoys. Everyone benefits from that. And it's just not protected enough. And when I saw that the 10th Amendment limits the decision of whether something can be built to the state or the people, because that's one of the powers not given to the federal government, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. The problem in how you fight all this building that's going on in New Jersey is not by saying the building is wrong per se, but saying that the way it's approved is wrong. And that if you go to New England, where it requires quorums of 240 people to make those decisions whether something can be built or not, they've protected their countrysides out in Massachusetts. I went to Amherst College. The same views exist now that existed out there when I was there in the 80s. Whereas when I was growing up here in the early 80s, we had West Windsor was an entire bunch of farms. And now it's a bunch of homes because we don't have those large quorums. You're concentrating the power in the few locally, which intensifies corruption and kind of retards the citizenry and the polity. And it's inhibiting when you're just 5 people deciding for 20,000. So subsequently, you have this, kind of like rampant greed going on at the expense of every citizen of America. So it's a real sacrifice. It's a real challenge to overturn that using the Constitution, using a law that already exists. You know, for people to realize that something wrong has happened, takes on another dimension. You know, and to me, that's almost like a spiritual dimension you were alluding to before. How can this had gone on? How can we not know our own Bill of Rights?
It's not something that's really taught that much in public schools either. I think you have 1 year of government, and you know, you don't hit that topic again. You know, I think the whole way that that history is taught, when you take math or science, you have the basics, and you always have to go back to the basics, even at the beginning of the school. You know, the beginning when school starts, you hit the basics and you build on that. But I think that American students, kids in the American schools, score very low on history. So somehow it's not being taught well enough to even, I think, you know, stick with you.
When they say the Constitution is trampled, that is true. When they say you can't fight City Hall, that's not true, because if you know the powerful information of the 10th Amendment, you know how City Hall is illegal. But for instance, do you know how many days a year Congress is required to meet according to the Constitution?
No.
1. It's supposed to be like the 3rd Monday of every December. Can you imagine if we had a Congress where everyone got together just 1 day a year or a couple days a year, and then you really brought up the important issues that concerned your state and your districts? You would have some pretty profound conversation, because they're not there wasting their time over every little thing. You're there to talk about the profoundest, most important, wisest things. Do you know what the right to petition the government for redress of grievance means?
No.
I mean, that's a basic First Amendment right. Everyone thinks that's your right to collect signatures and take it to the mayor and say, look, we got 10,000 signatures of people that want this, even though the mayor. No, petition is the old legal term to bring something up in court. So it's a right about ensuring that a judiciary will consider the concerns of any one citizen out there. So it's a wonderful right to have issues like I had attempt to be entertained by a wise person, or several. So I mean, just so not knowing about the ideality behind the judiciary, not knowing the 10th Amendment reservation of powers, not knowing even the 9th Amendment, which is about how the rights enumerated in the Constitution should not be construed to deny or disparage rights retained by the people. That's a very uninvoked, unused, but it's our 9th Amendment. You know, what is it about? So, I mean, there are a lot of mysteries of the Constitution, and the great thing about democracy is that it's meant to be evolved. This isn't like the final solution by any stretch. This is supposed to provide us with the means and the mechanisms to improve.
So is that how we've evolved to 5 people representing us on a committee?
See, if you look through history, there have always been sacrifices. There's been World War II, the destruction of buildings in Germany, the devastation of France, and there have been wars throughout history. And in some ways, this is like the equivalent of our war. We're not having some sort of like bombing of the countryside, but we are having a destruction of the countryside going on. And the same way epochs of old have had to deal with the mystery of why people would war one another, we have to deal with the mystery of why we're letting the few rule the many locally, when our Constitution would seem to protect us from that.
All right, there's a few other issues that you wanted to touch on, and gay marriage being one of them. What are your ideas about that?
I'm just going to speak very briefly here. Number one, I feel marriage is a morally ambiguous institution of reproduction. If gay people have never seemed to answer the question that if they can't reproduce, why would they engage in marriage? I mean, love should be enough. I mean, if it is that. Number two, what is it about gay people that makes them gay and me not? I really want to know certifiably, you know, so that this can be referred to, so that if you're having a real debate over this sort of thing, you want some of these simple points answered, like marriage is an institution of reproduction, isn't it? Why is it we've never explained why you're